Hey everyone, I'm Joey. Thanks so much for checking this out. If you're watching on LinkedIn or social, this is really just a living room conversation. I always enjoy interviewing leaders to share success, and I couldn't think of a better person to share how I got to know Bill Goldring, an icon in New Orleans, as well as in Kentucky, as the owner of Buffalo Trace and chairman of Sazerac Companies. He is a landmark leader in the city, and I just enjoy being around him. Now let me explain how I met Bill. This is my dad's briefcase. I've carried this around since I was 36 years old. I'm a little more old school, Bill.
Absolutely.
And the reason I carry it around, just so you know, I'm gonna introduce you next. My father was Bill's friend. They played tennis together, but I never met my father until I took an ancestry DNA test and learned he was quite a statesman. Bill?
Absolutely. Incredible guy.
And he was a lawyer, and you were tennis friends.
Right.
New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club. And so from that relationship, I had the opportunity to meet Bill, and we formed a friendship. Many people want something from you, but very few want something for you. And Bill's one of those that has really impacted my leadership journey. He's opened doors, and I've learned a lot. I call them listening sessions. Here I have Phil Nico, one of the nation's most successful leadership consultants who has influenced people like David Green, the CEO of Hobby Lobby. Phil speaks around the US and has a big platform. I'm just honored. Phil, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
This is some of those beautiful paintings, Mr. Bill, that I've ever seen. And we took pictures of the painting where we're lowering the flag of France and raising the flag of America downstairs. It's just a beautiful office. Mr. Bill has been so gracious, his whole team. So it's an honor to be here, Joey, with you. And it's always good to be around leaders. You know, when leaders get better, everybody gets better. When you find somebody that's done it well for a long time, it's a blessing to be there with them. So thank you for having us, Joey, and setting this up.
Most people want to look brilliant, and I really appreciate having other people look brilliant. Bill, I wanted to talk to you to kick us off today. I know in your leadership qualities, you have 30 leadership qualities that will guarantee success. The first one is treat all people alike, whether that person is superior or subordinate in life, whether the chairman of the board or the janitor. Bill, why did you write that?
Godson, and he was graduating from college, and I tried to figure out what I wanted to tell him. So I started writing things down that I thought would be important for his life. So I got up to 30 and stopped because I couldn't think of another one. I've given that chart to so many different people, from my kids and grandkids. I think I condensed it all into 30 different qualities.
They're filled with leadership insight, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who messages me. Phil, what do you think about that quality? Because that's not something you hear a lot with successful people. When you're interacting with head of entire organizations, is that something the ego gets in the way, and you have to, how do you balance humility and confidence?
I'll tell you a funny story about that. We had a friend of mine, and he was on vacation with his son. They were walking down the street in Tennessee, and he sees this sign, and it says, "Leave your egos by the door." And his son goes, "Dad, why do they want you to put your waffles by the door?" He's talking about Eggo waffles. So whenever we would see somebody come into a boardroom and they got the ego, we'd say, "Would you look at those waffles?" And so I think there's no real place for it. Bill says in his principles, power is assumed. Why do you have to prove it to anybody? I love that, Bill, you say never abuse it. In fact, I think it's one of the things that has been an enemy of our community is abuse of power. And it's good to see a person of your stature saying, hey, look, don't abuse power. There's no need for it.
Yeah, I found that oftentimes people are attracted to people who are successful, and they always want something from you. So how do you create an environment where you're filling your cup as a leader and you're not pouring out so much that the stress and the giving is taken away from you being profitable, but also profitable in life? How do you advise people who are just driven to succeed, but they're balancing personal life? Any advice there with how you've done that through the years?
Right, understand the question.
I like it. How do you balance people always coming to you, wanting something from you, versus you being able to give something to them, but also being healthy?
Well, I can tell you I've got a foundation, and I've learned to turn over so much to the head of our foundation. I'm a softie, and I listen to everybody. Giving away money and things to people is a tough thing. It's tougher than making money. Figuring where you're going to give it to and how it can affect the most people and do good for the community and many people.
I have a thought about that. What Joey is talking about could be related to money, but also time. And what you've given us today is your time, which we're appreciative of. There's a grid that we all have to form, and not everybody knows how to communicate it or articulate it. Some of it's in people's gut. I had a conversation this morning with a person out of Dallas about this. If I see that they are hungry, it aligns with something that I can give them. If I can't give them what they're looking for, then I don't see a reason to waste that time. But if they are hungry and humble and come with questions and they're drawing, where I'm not having to push, they're just pulling from me, I'm thrilled to meet with a person like that. The time will not seem like a big investment because they're ready, they're prepared, and they can do something with it. I also had a guy out of Canada tell me what we want to invest in is organizations that we know are going to be a good horse to bet on. In other words, he could sense that this person, if I invest in them, it'll have a multiplied impact. Not everybody can articulate that. A lot of this is in people's gut feeling. That's what I've seen in leaders. They just sense it. I think in this case, you were great friends with Joey's father, and you see a man who's 40 with 6 kids who's just out there cranking, and you're like, the guy's hungry. I just want to meet with the guy. How could you not love Joey? And so we're so appreciative of the time that you spent.
Being around humble people is a big factor in, I think, your success. Having been to Buffalo Trace in Frankfort, Kentucky, it is the gold standard. And you treated the people I invited as if they were famous celebrities. Walking through that customer service experience really uplifted my vision. And it showed me that, hey, I may have grew up telling everybody I was Italian, which is true. I am Italian on my mom's side. But my father was a Scotch Irishman, and you bottled a Scotch after my dad's name, Glenn Quinton. So I've been lying to people telling them I'm Italian. I am Italian. The friendship is awesome. If you're watching this right now and you're wondering, like, why are we having this conversation? What's in it for you? I would say catching leadership principles more than being taught. Everyone pretends they have the answers and the ego of the leaders. Everybody wants to be great. But what I found with one of your qualities, Bill, it says, provide for your family. Set a good image and have a healthy balance between work and family. Now, many people watching are struggling right now. The pain of having a healthy marriage, healthy life, healthy family success, balancing that with work success. I wanted to ask, how have you been able to live this principle in a way that people who are humble and hungry, and maybe they're struggling right now to balance everything, how did you find the way to do it all? Work-life
as a
balance?
leader.
You have to spend time with your family. Spending time with your kids is very tough, especially when you're growing a business. The best days that I can remember in spending time with my kids was I'd come home from work, I'd go for a 6-mile jog, we'd have a bite to eat, and I had a jacuzzi in the backyard. And I'd sit there with the kids in that jacuzzi when they were calm and weren't killing each other. And we'd talk about life and explain the do's and don'ts of life. And that was pretty important, those moments.
I love that you took time to write down your 30 principles, and the reason why when we asked you the motivation was your grandchild. I thought that was so nice. My dad, at 31 years old, took time to write all 5 of his kids a letter. And he died at 64. I found this letter the day before his funeral, and it had been sealed for 33 years. I have that letter with me. I didn't bring it on purpose. It just happens to be in this portfolio. When I speak, I bring my dad's letter with me. And it was a special thing when a person, a leader, they take time to do so much for customers and so much for the team. But when you take time and do something for your children and for the next generation, usually it gets enshrined in something special. It's memorable. And
my father wrote a letter to me when I was 21 years of age. It was probably the most important thing I ever had from my father. My father never wrote me a letter other than this one, although we had many good in-depth conversations. When I got that, I knew that it was something that I wanted to say for the rest of my life, and the values in there were so important. I took that letter and I put it somewhere, but I couldn't remember where I put it. And 25 years later, I found it. And after I found it, I had it emblazed in bronze. And I gave my kids each a copy of it. And I've got a copy of it on my desk. It helped me make lifelong decisions. One of the most important decisions was, When my father died, I gave my entire inheritance to a foundation and kept no financial rewards from that.
You don't see that every day.
But every day I look at that letter and make decisions based on what he did.
Mr. Bill, you just tied together life, leadership, and legacy. At Legendary, we say it like this: it's where content, coaching, and community come together to maximize your life, leadership, and legacy. The way that Mr. Bill just shared, that one leadership move his dad made impacted his life and left a legacy. And so it tied it all together. Something powerful about when a father or even a mother sits down and writes down. They take something that's in their invisible parts of their mind and heart and they put it in the visible. It's everlasting. You can always look back on it. That's why people write books, but a letter is very special.
I'll give you a copy of it when we leave here.
Thank you.
I like it. It brings up the thought of my dad wrote in his journal, Bill. I don't know if you knew this, but you gave me my dad's Jefferson Parish badge. And that was just such a treasure to me, having never...
I'm sorry.
It was a treasure. He had a 99% conviction rate. And
Right.
you could describe my dad more than I.
It's just hard to imagine anybody working for the DA. Out of 100 cases, he won 99 of them.
That's amazing.
And his father could read a 400-page book in 10 minutes, and he'd remember everything that was in that book. Yeah, he was a special guy.
You once quizzed me on if I had that same intellect, and you asked me, "Are you as smart as your dad?" And I said, "I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I ask great questions." I read, I speed read, I love to read, and what I found, you showed some personality tests when you were hiring. This was old school, and I love old school meets new school. I'm an old school person. I carry around that briefcase everywhere I go. I love cigars. Good old-fashioned conversations.
Right.
Men need to be men again. I enjoy being around people like you. What I've found when reading and going through all my father's things and observing his journal, he writes in there that real life can only be lived with purpose from God and really meaning and enjoyment. Life's too hard to not have that in your life. It was from that journal that inspired me to write my book, Real Life Leadership, how to maximize your influence in life, not just your business.
For you to be successful in this business, and I didn't know that you gave the inheritance that your father left. I tell you, that's a big deal for Gen 2 leaders. Mr. David Green, one of the things he says is that the Bible says, if you don't work, you don't eat. If you're a Green family member, you don't get a piece of Hobby Lobby. You have an opportunity to work there, and that's how you get a paycheck. And so it's interesting, his philosophy, but he's a Gen 1 leader. And Mr. Bill, as a Gen 2 leader, forewent the inheritance and forced himself into a situation where he had to earn it on his own. You don't really see that often. That's a groundbreaking move. It's a power move. And I think it was steeped in honor for your father and something that he was passionate about. It's one thing for us as a Gen 1 leader, a founder, to come in and say, I don't want to hurt my children and give them too much. It's another when the Gen 2 says, I'm going to honor my father and I'm not going to take that. I'm going to put myself into a situation where I have to earn it. That's a powerful move. What was the motivation? I'm assuming honor. What was the motivation?
My father one day put a salt shaker on the table. And he said, how much salt can you use? He said, there's enough salt in there for the whole world. He said, take out what you need and take care of other people.
Wow. That's a principle right there. Just write your notes and prepare your talk for your kids. With that in mind, I know that you've been successful in business. You've had to create a vision, build a team, and build scalable systems to develop ideas. But if you take a look at your 30 principles, I keep seeing community in there a lot. Is that a philosophy that your dad had, that you learned? Is it something that you adopted? And then how were you able to scale ideas in the community like you've done in business and with your family? Where did you get that idea from, this big community investment idea?
I think it all came back from that letter that really had a lot to do with just giving back, but how do you feel that? People who can't give away money and don't have it in here, and you go to somebody and ask them for money, if they don't have it in here, it doesn't feel good. But if it feels good, then you're doing the right thing.
So in the letter, your father communicated about not just the salt shaker, he communicated a principle of invest in the community,
Sure.
Give back. That's so powerful. I'll tell you, if you could theme out and just title this entire interview, it's gonna be the power of the letter.
Right.
And it really has shaped my life. I've read this to tens of thousands of people on 4 different continents right before I lead them through the creation of their eulogy. They create their own eulogy. We force them to do it because that flushes up in their mind what matters most. So there's a famous Psalm 90:12. It's written by Moses.
Right.
And it says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. When we realize how short life is, we might wisen up. And the things that matter most in this life flush up in our mind. We're able to see it and do something about it. Your dad had a moment when he wrote that letter, and my dad too. In fact, when he time-stamped this, it was July 29th, 1981 at 1 in the morning.
Right.
And that was at the top of it. That's how we knew it was sealed for 33 years. So it's interesting. A small moment in time where you have clarity on what's most important and you take a minute to do something about it that really has defined your life, and you've carried that heritage on. I appreciate you having us here. How are you able to cast vision, build teams, scale ideas in the community?
Oh, you just have to know people and meet a lot of people. And when you kiss the right frog, you know it. You know, I just left a meeting or a luncheon with 1,200 people, and I would venture to say I probably knew half of them, and 75% of them knew me.
Wow.
And when you meet and know all these people who cover the whole spectrum of our population, you just feel good about it.
That's so good.
I wanted to bring up something on that one. Dr. Ken Blanchard talks about the 5 points of power. He talks about relationship power, task power, knowledge, position, and people power. I never realized that I had a gift with people, but I never really leveraged relationship power, like kissing that frog, where you grow business. For the CEOs out there, it sounds like you know how to leverage both people skills, but you're also very profitable in your business. You run good business. You have organizational vitality. You've attracted great quality people. I love how you recruited Paul Fine from Tulane. That's a great story. How do you know when you're around the right people? How do you trust people? How do you attract top talent in a way that represents you in the best way?
Meeting people and knowing what's inside of them, you can usually tell in the first 3 minutes. We always gave measurement center tests before there were computers that measured people's personality. We had a company at Lawrencemont, New York, and a little old lady that ran it gave me an 18-page summary of each person's personality. It was probably a 45-minute test. I came to rely on that test, and I would give her credit for all the people that I hired, good quality people. And when she would assign risk, fair risk, poor risk, excellent risk. And when that came in, it validated everything there. I wouldn't give anybody the test unless I had somewhat of a positive feeling about them. But they were a big factor in everything that I did.
It's amazing.
I'm going to pass the ball to you. I know you guys.
In New Orleans, we're known more for kissing the ring. And when I heard Mr. Bill say, to really scale ideas in the community, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. Made me laugh. But I think what you're saying and what I'm hearing you say is that it's unlikely people, but you got to be open to really connecting with them and getting to know them. In the first 3 minutes, you can catch that gut check. They could be a person that could take the idea and run with it. I love in one of your principles, you talk about delegating and giving it away, giving the power away and let somebody else take the leadership position of that. So maybe you could speak more to that. Have there been times where you had an idea for the community? And I think that when you run at the level that you run, you see further, farther, and faster than a lot of other people. And so you have these ideas, but you don't really have the bandwidth to implement all these ideas. Have you had an idea for the community and you said, you know what, let me make a couple of phone calls, put some people together, and then communicated it, and it's really taken off. And it's something that we enjoy today, but maybe you did it 20, 30 years ago.
So the answer to that is one of the things that was really important to me was obesity. I couldn't understand why New Orleans was not just the most overweight city in America, but the most obese city in America. And I would go to politicians and say, we really need to do something about this. And politicians, that's not a political idea and it's not going to help me. There was a dean of the medical school at Tulane University who I befriended. He came from Mass General in Boston. I said, what can we do about it? We came up with an idea that we were going to develop something within Tulane University. We were going to teach doctors about nutrition. That program became so successful that it was franchised out to 63 medical schools around the world. It really took hold. I'm still involved in that in some way. It was great. So have we solved obesity in New Orleans? No, we haven't, because we've got a Popeyes on every corner. Kids are still drinking the 64-ounce soft drinks.
And there's no diet gumbo.
And the stuff that's just not good for you. Mayor Bloomberg in New York took some of those things off the table in New York. And until we change obesity in this country, healthcare is not going to change.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for making that effort all those years ago. I do believe that nothing we do will have no result. It's going to have a result. You've certainly raised some awareness. What I've noticed when it comes to legacy is that the idea guy is not always the person that gets things done. The tech guy is not always the person that gets things done. But when the philanthropist shows up at the table, people that don't work together start to work together.
Right.
This is coming from Mark Green. Mark is Mr. David's other son, and really the father of this concept called collective impact. Stanford made it famous, and collective impact, he's done this to really help change whole communities. And what he saw, Mr. Bill, was so many people doing the same thing in overlap, and they were coming to their family for resources and philanthropy dollars, but they were doing the same thing. And if he could just get them in the room and they could cooperate, he would give the same amount of money, but it would have a multiplied impact. Have you noticed that as you've gone through this time in your life where you've given back into the community, where you've had to really use your position as a philanthropist to make people work together for a common goal?
I've tried it in numerous instances, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. It's like in politics, 50% of the people are to the left and 50% of the right, and you can try to bring them together, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
Those waffles get in the way.
But you can keep trying, bringing people together.
It's great.
I think that pivoting now, just as we're landing the plane, this is rich. I wanted to ask you your 11th principle, your leadership quality that will guarantee success is power is something that comes with the territory and does not have to be shown as others recognize it, but never abuse it. So will you speak to that as it pertains to business or life or philanthropy or sales? Because people are wanting power, and that is a genuine need to have success in business or success in sales, and you have to be influential. You can't hide. You have to brand yourself, if you will. Would you just like to speak any thoughts as it pertains to that quality that can help us?
I think you're right. Power comes with the territory, and you don't flaunt it ever. But people that know you accept what you're saying, and that is something that people see more of you than you see of yourself. I don't know.
People see more of you than you see of yourself. It reminds me of looking in the mirror and forgetting what you look like by not having your actions follow through on your character or your principles. Wow, that's powerful. I wanted to pivot. You got something, Phil?
I was about to say, probably the most important part of power in my life is when I call up or talk to someone in a restaurant, I can get a reservation.
That's great.
I love that.
I have a question for you. That we're running out of time, and I just want to make sure that whoever watches this, they hear this. There's going to be the next generation of leaders rising up. I know that you couldn't be more proud of people stepping into leadership positions, and they're going to have a couple of roads. They can go down the old school, a corrupt road, a good road, and I just want to give you a spot to communicate to the next generation leader, not just in New Orleans, but in every community in America, as these leaders are rising and coming into positions of leadership and power and authority. What is your encouragement to them? You've been a father to this city. And those people from this next generation need to rise up and begin to watch over their communities and the well-being of their communities, not just run good businesses and raise great families. What is the encouragement you have?
I'm not sure I can answer that, so maybe if you could rephrase
If the next generation of leaders are coming into their leadership positions, this is the greatest transfer of wealth and leadership the world's ever seen at one time. We are right in the hour of the great transfer as the baby boomers are passing on their leadership positions and wealth. And my question to you is, what is your encouragement? What would you say to these people that are going to assume great leadership positions and great wealth, and how would they steward it?
I think those 30 things that I put down on a piece of paper for leadership were very important, but they're little things that when you mentor people are important, and you don't think of them as big things. Last week I was out of town and I met some young kid that had a fairly new job. When I was leaving him, I looked him in the face and we shook hands. I said, "What was that?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "That handshake of yours. Where did you learn how to shake like a fish?" The guy said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I'm gonna tell you 3 things that my mother said. The first thing you do is you look somebody in the eye. Second thing you do is give them a firm handshake. And the third thing you do is hold your shoulders up high," which I don't always do, but I tried. And I left the young man, he was smiling, and he told that story to 5 other people that came back and told it to me. And I saw him a couple of days later, and he gave me this big handshake and looked me in the eye. So I had known I had made somewhat of an impression.
That's great.
But that's just little things that every day, it's very simple to do. And sometimes when you're talking to a woman and you meet them at a cocktail party, most people look at them and turn their head away and look over their shoulder. But when you take a woman and you look her in the eye, give her a good handshake, she knows that you're paying attention to them, and that is important with everything.
That's great.
On that topic of leaders, CEOs, I've had a lot of conversations with women leaders, and it's impressive. I have 5 daughters. If you want to talk about leadership, I've learned more from watching my daughters interact and the different personalities, and my son, and watching little Elijah grow has been a true joy and a treasure to me. But more importantly, I just have watched and I've seen, and I've had recent conversations with, I won't name by name, but she was having a conversation with me as it pertains to leadership. And as soon as she could smell that I respected her brand, her credibility, her market, her business, she could tell that I was wanting to promote what she does. She immediately saw that I had looked her in the eye, even though it was social media, but I respected who she was as a person, and as a result, I had more influence. And so today, I think we're seeing another transfer, and that's, we're seeing women leadership like we've never seen it before. But there's also an hour, I believe, for men to take that role again of being a gentle, humble, kind servant leader, and not be timid when around an environment. It's time for men to be men again and bring back the old school, but in a way that is inviting and influential. So I didn't know if you had anything on that, but another conversation, unless you had anything else.
No, I just wanted to say I've learned so much in our time together, Mr. Bill. I've learned lessons from your mama, letters from your daddy, kiss the frog to influence, give the credit away, and major in the minors. Boy, I tell you, each one of those, wait till you hear the backstory on each one of those points. You're not going to want to miss this.
Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. And again, the quadruple bottom line is be around providers of choice, investment of choice, employers of choice, and leaders of choice. And that's what really developed my ability to have great conversations just like this. Not trying to be brilliant, not trying to show the world who I'm with, but just enjoying the relationships. And Bill, thank you so much.
Not at all.
And we look forward
Can I put in one more plug?
I love it.
Drink Buffalo Trace.
That's great.
Bye, everyone.